Learning jazz improvisation can be really intimidating. I hear students say over and over again, how will I ever learn to do this? I even said that myself when starting out. It seems as though the more you learn, the more you realize how little you know. The good news is that everyone can learn to improvise and play over chord changes. You just need a disciplined practice approach and the right material to practice. I have found that playing melodic lines over the 2-5-1 chord progression to be one of the most effective things you can do to work on and develop your improvisation skills. So here's an easy line to get you started. Believe it or not, in that one simple line, there are several elements that we can reuse in countless ways to make endless lines which become material to improvise with. If we break this line down into 4 groups of notes, we get short patterns that we can mix and match. Let me show you. These first 4 notes are just the Dorian scale going up from the root. 1, 2, 3, 4. The next group of 4 notes is a very common pattern where we skip 1 note in the scale going down. 5, 3, 2, 1. The next group has a chromatic passing tone and comes out of the bebop scale. And the last group is what we refer to as an enclosure. Our final note is the C, the root of the 1 chord, and we enclose it with a note below and a note above. Also note that each measure starts out on the root of the chord, D, G, C. Let's try swapping out one of these groups of notes to get a variation on this line. See what we did there? The first 3 groups are the same, but the last one is different. We actually reused the first group of notes here, 1, 2, 3, 4 of the D Dorian scale. We also ended on a different chord tone, the E, which is the 3rd of C major 7. Let's make a new variation. Can you hear what we did there? The first 2 groups are still the same, but this time we repeated them, but with different starting notes. It's the exact same 8-note pattern played up the interval of a tritone. What do you think of that sound? There's a lot more tension, right? But it all resolves nicely on the last note. This is a simple yet very effective example of using the tritone substitution on a 2-5-1 chord progression, and we're using very basic scale patterns to do it. This time our final note in the phrase is the 5 of our 1 chord. Let's listen to all 3 of these patterns back to back now. Because we're only changing part of the line each time and we're recycling groups of notes, you can see how quickly we could learn these 3 lines. Let me show you one more variation. This is just like 1B, but instead of transcribing the first 2 groups of notes up a tritone, we transpose them up a minor 3rd. That's another sound with some cool tension in it that, once again, gets resolved nicely to the 3rd of the 1 chord. This is a simple example of playing the backdoor dominant substitution. Fancy name, but it's easy to do, and it sounds familiar if you've ever listened to jazz. And just like that, we have 4 great lines built using a minimum amount of material arranged in slightly different ways. When you learn lines with different options like this, it sets you up to be able to improvise more fluidly. Once you realize that all these complex lines are just built out of simple groupings, and those groupings can be interchanged in countless ways, the whole thing suddenly seems not quite as intimidating. The next step is to learn these in all 12 keys, and I know what you're thinking. That's gonna be so hard. The first time you take a line through all 12 keys, yes, it will take some time, but it will get significantly easier each time you repeat the process. If you do this daily, it won't be long before the process only takes a matter of minutes to get through. And it is at that point that you begin to have some fluency when it comes to improvising over chord changes. What we have just learned is the first 4 patterns in my 2-5-win improvisation course. Songs are made up of chord progressions, and the 2-5-1 chord progression is by far the most common in jazz music. It is so common that many jazz standards are almost entirely made up out of 2-5-1s. If we master playing over the 2-5-1 chord progression in all 12 keys, we will be able to play great solos on any tune. But the patterns you choose to learn are important. There are certain phrases in the jazz language that everyone needs to know and be familiar with. Lines that are part of the tradition and make up the essential vocabulary we communicate with. Improvising is not just making new random material up. It is the art of communicating in an established language that's been evolving across generations. That's why I created the 2-5-win course for you. It's a collection of dozens of great lines that come directly out of the tradition of jazz improvisation. I've organized them in sections starting on each note of the scale, so you maximize your options and learn to play with variety. Just like we did earlier, I give you variations on each line, again increasing your options. Practicing this way leads to greater fluency. And instead of just handing you a PDF with a bunch of notes on it for you to practice, I have recorded a lesson video for each line where I explain exactly what is happening, why each note choice works, and how good lines are built. I teach you through examples what a tritone substitution is. If you've ever struggled to understand that concept, it will be clear to you once you've gone through this course. I teach you about the backdoor dominant, the altered scale, the diminished scale, and how all these things can be used in the context of the 2-5-1 chord progression. 2-5-win is exactly the sort of stuff I practice daily because it is extremely effective, efficient, and gets measurable results quickly. Click the link to enroll and let's get you started right now. I'll see you in there.